there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the adult sci-fi and fantasy series I own but have not read. Now all of these series I've heard a lot about, and they're series that I know that I will really enjoy based off of people I know who've read them and really enjoyed them, or even recommendations that I've gotten from BookTube or Goodreads. So without further ado, let's just get on into the series. I'm going to start with the sci-fi first, so if you want to skip ahead into the fantasy series, I'll put a timestamp down below. The first series I'm going to be talking about is the Wayfarer Trilogy by Becky Chambers, and these books include A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, A Closed and Common Orbit, and Record of a Spaceborne Few. I have heard that these books are more like companion novels and you don't necessarily have to read the first one in order to read the other books, or that you can even read them out of order. In A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, we follow a woman named Rosemary, and she is fleeing Mars to become a clerk on the spaceship Wayfarer. This book mostly focuses on the interpersonal relationships between the crew members of the Wayfarer. I know that doesn't include just humans, it includes other species from other planets in the galaxies. So while I've heard that this book isn't really filled with that much action, the relationships that are developed between these characters are really genuine and really real, and I'm very much looking forward to starting the series. The next sci-fi series I still need to read is the Silo Trilogy by Hugh Howey, and those books include Wool, Shift, and Dust. This series follows a post-apocalyptic Earth, and humans no longer inhabit the surface of the Earth. Instead, they have built a subterranean city and a giant silo. This story follows a character named Holston who has just become the new sheriff of the silo. And this story follows Holston as she begins to uncover mysteries and secrets of the silo, and she also begins to question if outside of the silo is actually as bad as people are saying, or maybe there are some secrets that are going on with regards to the underground versus surface of Earth. This is a series that I have had on my shelves for a long time. I found it at the used bookstore and I've heard such good things about it, and I just have not gotten to it. So I really want to try to get to this series in 2020. The next sci-fi trilogy I need to read is the Themis Files by Sylvan Newville, and those books include Sleeping Giants, Waking Gods, and Only Human. In Sleeping Giants, we follow the story of Rose, who's growing up in South Dakota, and as a child, she falls through like a hole in the earth and lands in this cavern with all of these inscriptions on the walls, and she finds this giant metal hand. Fast forward to when Rose was an adult, and she has become a physicist and spent her entire life trying to figure out the purpose and origin of this hand. As Rose and her team uncover more and more about this hand, they begin to wonder what this actually means for humanity, if it is a portent of doom, or if it's a weapon of mass destruction of some sort. All of these books are fairly short for science fiction, so that's another reason that I think I'll be able to knock these out in 2020. Additionally, a lot of this book is written in interview style, which should also make it a really quick read. Now on to the adult fantasy series that I own but still need to read. The first one I'm going to be talking about is the Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and I actually have the bind up of the 3 books. I found this at my used bookstore for like $7 and I couldn't pass it up. In this story, you follow a girl whose name is, I think it's Yenny. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's very bizarrely written. I'm just going to call her Yenny. But we follow a girl named Yenny, and she is currently mourning the loss of her mother when she is summoned by her grandfather to the very infamous and magnificent floating city called Sky. When Yenny arrives at Sky, her grandfather names her heir to this magnificent city, but he also names his niece and nephew heir, purposely pitting them against each other in a power struggle. Therefore, Yenny is forced to learn the politics of this kingdom, even if that means invoking the help of gods. In this world, gods exist, and they are currently enslaved in the floating city of Sky, so Yenny seeks out their help. Now, I haven't heard too much about this series, and I've never read anything by N.K. Jemisin before. I think this is her debut series, but it sounds like a very interesting story, and honestly, it sounds a bit dark and gritty to me, and I'm very excited to finally delve into this trilogy. The next trilogy I need to read is the Queens of Renthia Trilogy by Sarah Beth Durst, and those books include Queen of Blood, The Reluctant Queen, and The Queen of Sorrow. In this trilogy, we follow a world that is encumbered by malevolent spirits, and these malevolent spirits are trying to take over this kingdom, and the only person that can keep them at bay is the queen. And because being queen in this nation is such a dangerous thing, they are constantly training girls to take the queen's place should something happen to her while she's defending her lands from these spirits. In this story, we follow Delania, who is a quiet academic student, and Ven, who is a disgraced sword champion, and they embark on a journey to uncover why these spirits are trying to rid this land of humans and where their ire comes from. I've never read anything about malevolent spirits that are trying to take over a land, so I'm very eager to get to this trilogy as well. The next adult fantasy trilogy I own but have not read is The Red Queen's War by Mark Lawrence, and those books include Prince of Fools, The Liar's Key, and The Wheel of Ocean. I've never read anything by Mark Lawrence before, so I figured that this trilogy was a good place to start. In this trilogy, we follow a character named Jalen, and Jalen is a scoundrel. He is a drinker and a gambler and a womanizer, and his grandmother is the Red Queen, a very powerful matriarch over this kingdom. When war threatens Jalen's kingdom, his grandmother calls all of her relatives to war, including him, and he is definitely not too thrilled about it. I believe that Mark Lawrence mostly writes grimdark fantasy, which I do enjoy. I'm currently reading the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, which is grimdark. So I'd really like to dabble in more series of grimdark fantasy, so I'm excited to get to this one. And the last adult fantasy series that I own but have not read is Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. And those books include The Dragonbone Chair, The Stone of Farewell, and Green Angel Tower. I don't know anything about this trilogy. I found it at a used bookstore, and I have read some of Tad Williams' other works, so I figured that this would probably be pretty entertaining. The only thing I know about this trilogy is that we follow Simon, and Simon is a 14-year-old servant at this castle called... And one day Simon finds himself apprenticed to this doctor who is also a wizard. That premise alone is very reminiscent of classical older fantasy series. I actually love that trope of a boy or girl coming from nothing and finding out that they have these powers and gaining this political influence and rising to the top. Those are one of my favorite sorts of stories to read, so I'm really hoping that this trilogy delivers on some of my favorite tropes in classic fantasy. Alright, so those are all of the adult sci-fi and fantasy series that I own but have not read. Comment down below and let me know which series I should prioritize in 2020 and which ones you have read and really enjoyed, so I can figure out which ones I want to read first. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so by hitting the subscribe button as well as the bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new videos, and I will see you soon in another one. Goodbye.